Go. Okay. Sector co-host, everything's okay? Okay, cool. Okay, good morning, everyone. I'm Pilar Marrero, EMS Associate Editor, and your moderator for today. Today's briefing couldn't be more timely. We are focusing on artificial intelligence, and we have entitled this briefing, Artificial Intelligence, the New Frontier in Technology. Will it bring utopia or dystopia? I'm imagining it's going to be somewhere in between. Much has been talked about in the past year about artificial intelligence, a rapidly evolving technology that has been under research for decades. We have seen the unveiling of chatbots that write scientific papers, legal briefs, news stories, sending shivers to the spine of every scientist, lawyer, and journalist, me included. But should we really worry? On the other hand, some posit that if used appropriately, AI can be a revolution for education, journalism, science, and other areas of human knowledge. However, FTC Chair Lina Khan recently said that AI can deliver critical innovation, but also, quote, turbocharge fraud and automate discrimination. Those are pretty strong words. The panel of experts will provide the basics to understand what AI is and what it brings to our societies, but also to discuss the potential bias in the AI data and the controversial use of copyrighted and created material to educate the technology, among other issues. Before I introduce our panel, I want to let you know that we reached out to several experts on racial and gender bias in the data that is used to program AI. Many of these researchers are women, most were African American, but none of them were able to make it at this day and time. So we don't have them, unfortunately, but we do have excellent experts in the panel, and we will discuss those issues, and we will send you the names and contact information we have for those researchers, so you can do further reporting on your own. Okay, all right, so let's go right into it. Without further ado, our speakers are Hector Palacios, research scientist at ServiceNow Research. He works on fundamental and applied research on artificial intelligence on the intersection of reasoning and machine learning. There you go. Chris Dede, Senior Research Fellow at Harvard Graduate School of Education and Associate Director of Research for the National AI Institute for Adult Learning and Online Education. And, okay, my script moved. Sean McGregor is a machine learning PhD, founder of the Responsible AI Collaborative, lead technical consultant for the IBM Watson AI X Prize, and developer of the AI Incident Database. And he's going to talk about that one. It's a pretty interesting project. We ask speakers to speak slowly for our interpreters in Spanish, Mandarin, and Korean, and we ask reporters to enter questions in the chat. We will send a video of today's briefing and expanded bios with contact information for each speaker to all participants later today. So, let's go first. Hector, are you ready? Go for it. You have to mute. Okay.
Good. Can you see my screen and can you hear me?
Yes. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much for the opportunity for being here today. This is a topic that for me is an old concern, and suddenly it became everybody's concern. I have the chance to speak first, meaning that I can just cover more basic things, and I hope the other panelists would sort of dig deeper in some other aspects of this. As a motivation, a title I would like for thinking about this problem is who's writing, what is it that we read? And I'm gonna focus a bit on text, however many of the same issues apply to video or to audio or to images in general. And just this question of communication and text, this is a bit what my topic today. And I'm just gonna cover two things quickly about AI and what does it mean, and what does it mean in particular for text generation, like ChatGPT, and give some elements of strengths and weakness there. So basically where we are today, this is May 2023, and then suddenly we have this text that seems to be written by human, but it's not human. We know that, ChatGPT is a keyword that we might find. They go by these other names like language models. And the first things to keep in mind is that this is just software, right? It's a program. And this is another kind of language. All of these things come from mathematics, and they're from mathematics they call the idea of computing. And then these AI things that we have now, there are basically sophisticated programs. And while mathematics, for people who know that, we tend to understand what is going on, and computing is a bit more automatic. There was a moment where programs become so sophisticated that we don't know what's going on. So we're in front of a class of programs that have some emergent properties, but software always have that, right? There are also things that the computer tend to do, and we're sometimes hard to understand what's going on. And in general, this is also very connected to who we are. I'm going to make these connections because at the end of the day, this sort of technology is coming back to us, to something that is very intimate, that is text in this case. So about AI, I like thinking about AI in general, about all the techniques. This is an old area, but old as an area, but maybe not as a science. The same have been around for perhaps 70 years. And I like thinking about AI like two lungs, right? So we have on one hand, this system that kind of called system one about reactive behavior, about your guts. You just react with that. It's close to, perhaps it's close to what we expect from data, from a statistic. You just take a shot. And on the other hand, this is part of us that can sort of stop for a second and thinking, what is it we're going to do? And this is an image just to emphasize that there are these sort of two modes of operation that we have. And the system today also has this capability. So when we talk about generating text, we can think about the cost of making a mistake. So if it's just, I can just say something and it's okay, then maybe just go on with my gut, with my instinct, it's enough. And in other cases, like I'm writing a contract, or I have a sensitive conversation. In these cases, I might need to think about that, right? And basically what's happening is that all of these techniques, I specialize on this idea of this sort of system one behavior, this sort of gut reaction, but they are not really good at the other side. In general, this class of programs called language models, some people have called them these sort of statistic parrots, in the sense that they're in principle repeating variation of what they have seen. And we also start to see these sort of elements of generalization and further consistency on text they have not seen. So there are some elements of that, but also because end of the day, they are based in data. So that means that they are also gonna try to remain close to the data. So if I said the CEO of a company is, they are more likely to put names of males, and perhaps white males, and not necessarily a person of color of another gender, right? They would. However, there are more consistency, and they think that we have passed a threshold where this property has become even more useful. And this is basically because text doesn't have all the possible realities of the universe, right? However, for situations when I'm not very familiar with the subject, they might actually convey some knowledge. Or if I am very familiar with a subject, sometimes I can quickly realize how is that good and how can I fix it? And so then the general question is, well, what do we do with this? And the two extremes are, this is just open bar, we do whatever we want, or we are cautious about it. And the answer is probably both, right? On one hand, we have this risk about that, because then we have a machine that can generate text, meaning that if I have money, I can generate text that can lead to misinformation or manipulation. I can increase over polarization. And in general, I fear that this sort of loss in text, especially like in oral or quick communication, right? It used to be the case that we see some text quickly and said, oh yes, that was probably written by a human. But this is not true anymore. It can be one of the things. And perhaps if somebody has a big enough budget, they might be generating many variations of that, and perhaps one that is like close to it. And at the same time, there is some opportunities for automation or for reducing the cost of some tasks that now actually no one wants to do them, right? So I'm gonna try to stop now for just so people, I think I am a bit over time. And to say there are opportunities for some kind of tasks, and then I can go a bit deeper later on different angles here. For instance, advertising or generation of content. Then what is the issue of that about copyright? this idea that sometimes something looks good and then we haven't like look at it. So we need to change our way to interact with text because of this. And in general, we need to think about the dangers and opportunities here. I think I'm going to stop for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Hector. Yeah, I mean, we heard that yesterday in the White House was talking to some of the Silicon Valley leaders and asking them to be cautious. There has been a famous letter that went around asking, to delay some of these implementations. Some people are saying the corporations are rushing to implement these chats without being careful enough. Plenty of studies have talked about, the problems with the data, because whatever data you put into this software, if it is biased, the bias comes out on the other side. But let's talk a little bit about the basics. Where do we see AI? I mean, we're talking about images, text. What else? What are the applications that are common right now?
I think I compared this with the Industrial Revolution. So back in the day, I wasn't there, but it seems that back in the day, people say, oh, yes, there are engines. So some people say, I'm going to buy an engine. What are you going to do with it? Well, I have a couple of applications for an engine because there was this new thing that could generate power and opens the imagination of what to do with it. After a while, nobody think about engine. When we say engine in a conversation, it's because we have a problem. Otherwise, we talk about car, about lift, about anything else but engines, right? So this will disappear. It will become many specialized things in many contexts. It will be gone, but at the same time, as in the Industrial Revolution, it would also change what is considered labor, what economic relationships. Many things are going to happen there, and probably the biggest surprises are going to come from the small details where this is actually useful. And the mega projects about doing an engine for going to the moon, one might not work. So it's very hard. It's always we tend to magnify the impact on big project, but we tend to underestimate the small impact. I think it's also very important that we have like many more angles for looking at this. And just image, text, and things like that. This is of course one case, but in general, it's this sort of local adaptation to many things. I don't know, farming is waiting for this, food processing is waiting for this, in many things. But I think in text in particular, yes, we actually have no idea what's going to happen with the way we interact with machines.
Julia Dudley has a question.
Hector, thank you for the explanation of processes when behind the internet, all of those type of things that are dealing with mathematics and stats and data. However, my question deals with first question is dealing with ChatGPT. We're being told that information is derived from news sites. And so some media people had some concerns about plagiarism. And then my second question is about algorithms that are dead processes that might be holding up different minority websites and minority news sites, so I'm being told. So I was wondering if you can clarify that. And I understand the algorithms are a set of processes, but if those set of processes are not updated or changed, it seems to be affecting the numbers or views or clicks on a website or news piece. Thank you.
Thank you. So two topics there. There is the issue of plagiarisms. I mean, I'm not an expert on almost anything, but in particular, I really don't know much about copyright and etc. Just two technical comments, right? So in some moment, people sort of took a snapshot of the internet, and so much that they might run out of internet. They basically capture everything they could capture, and so that snapshot, of course, have many variations of discussing again what happened with the stock of that particular big company. There are many variations of those. And at the same time, there can be corners of the internet where they discuss one particular reality that is not really popular, right? So then when you're going to do statistics, then of course, you're going to be better at talking about this big company, but you're not going to be very good about that particular thing, right? And even if you update the snapshot again, this would happen again. So everything that is factual, is related with the reality, is going to be good on this middle of the Wikipedia and in the front page of newspapers of what it is like this mainstream from the point of view of the internet, and the other things are going to be less. However, we have also seen that they are able sometimes to generalize in some context, meaning that if there's a new company they have never seen, and we talk about the CEO, it can talk about the CEO and the CFO of the company, and also because even for minority situations, and they are sometimes able to pull to do something meaningful there. But the question is in general that these things they guess and we don't know, right? So it's also about the usage of that. So, and they are less reliable in whatever is like a minority of the data. So, they're saying that the dog is a very safe phrase. It's okay. It's okay. But you get into regions that are a bit less common, then we can expect them to fall. So in general, the robustness of them, when there's any new element that is not popular, then it's even more fragile. And it's very hard to know when they're going to fall apart, because sometimes you change one thing and then it behaves very different.
Wow. Okay. All right. Thank you, Hector. Please stay around. We're going to have more questions at the end. And I want to welcome our second panelist, Chris Dede. He's Senior Research Fellow of Harvard Graduate School of Education and Associate Director of Research for the National AI Institute for Adult Learning and Online Education. Dr. Dede, welcome.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I'll say a little bit about the National Research Institutes. Then I want to talk about different ways that AI can be used. And then I'll talk about artificial intelligence in education, which is my particular area. So in the United States, the National Science Foundation has now funded 25 national AI institutes. Each of these is 5 years, $20 million. So these are substantial investments. 5 of them are related to education, and the other 20, cybersecurity, improvements in agriculture, improvements in medicine. You can imagine all the different things that might be involved. So the people who've thought the most about how these national AI institutes might help society are actually science fiction writers. Science fiction writers have been thinking and writing about AI for the last half century. And many of the things that are now appearing in the press are things that have been part of science fiction writing for decades. And they've worked out a lot of interesting ways of thinking about the strengths and limits of AI. And if we want to be just overgeneralized, there's 2 kinds of science fiction about AI. In one kind, AI is an independent actor out of control of human beings, and typically getting into a lot of trouble, which is what we see in today's headlines. When I was a graduate student, I watched the movie 2001: A Space Odyssey, where AI goes berserk and starts killing astronauts, for example. But the other theme within science fiction is AI as a partner in which there's a complementary relationship between a human being and an AI. And we see that, for example, in Star Trek: The Next Generation, where you have Captain Picard, the wise human starship captain, and then you have Data, who looks like a person, but is actually an android, a machine that's based on AI. And Captain Picard and Data have a complementary relationship. Data is capable of things Captain Picard is not capable of. Data is capable of absorbing, as you would expect from his name, enormous amounts of data in a matter of a second, and doing what's called reckoning, which is calculative prediction. It's mathematics, as Hector was saying, and making forecasts of different kinds. But then Captain Picard, because he's a human being, is capable of much more than reckoning. Captain Picard has sort of judgment, applied wisdom. And so he's the one that's in charge of the starship, and he uses Data's calculative predictions to help him make good decisions. To illustrate this in a less fantastic way, there are cancer specialists, oncologists now, who have AI partners. The AI can do something that no cancer specialist can do. It can scan every morning 1,500 medical journals online and see if there's something new about the treatment of a particular patient. It can scan medical records worldwide of similar patients undergoing a variety of treatments and get advice about what's working and what's not working. But you would never want the AI making the decisions, because the doctor knows things the AI doesn't know. The doctor knows about pain and death. The doctor understands that some people want quality of life and other people want quantity of life. It understands that cultures have different points of view about death. The different spiritual traditions have different points of view about death. That death affects a family as well as an individual, and so on and so on. AI does not understand any of those things. It's an alien kind of intelligence. It's not a weak kind of human intelligence that's getting stronger. It's an alien kind of intelligence. So what we see in that part of science fiction where you have human AI partnerships is something called IA. Not AI, but IA, intelligence augmentation, in which the whole is more than the sum of the parts. The person does what the person does well, the AI does this reckoning, and the combination of the two accomplishes things that neither one can by themselves. So one of the things that this National AI Institute that I'm part of, which is aimed at looking at workforce upskilling and reskilling, helping people have productive careers over perhaps a half century, is to look at AI-based assistance for instructors and also AI-based assistance for coaches. So if you're teaching and sort of pouring knowledge and skills into students' minds, you have assistants that can help you with library searches, laboratory instruction, tutoring, student question answering, finding a good student learning partner in a large class, and so on. They're very specialized. And what they do is to take a lot of data, calculate, and make a recommendation. The human being then is surrounded by those assistants, and the human being can be upskilled or deskilled. So if I, as the professor, just say, oh, great, I can spend more time reading the newspaper now because the AIs are going to do all this stuff for me, I'm actually deskilled, and the student experience isn't any better. It's probably a bit worse because the AIs don't understand all the things I just indicated about culture and individuals having biological bodies and ethical decision making and so on. But if I upskill, now I can be a much better instructor or mentor than I was before, because the AI is taking over a lot of the routine stuff. And of course, this is nothing new in human history either. The idea that machines can take over some things human beings do and let human beings do better things is part of the agricultural revolution, the industrial revolution, and so on. So my concern is that the goals of education are not changing to take into account the things that I'm describing about improving the processes of education. Because how do we judge the success of educational systems? How people do on high stakes tests. High stakes tests to get into Harvard, high stakes tests to get into law school, high stakes tests to, determine maybe who gets hired for what position. That's reckoning. AI does really well on those kind of high stakes tests. And so if that's our measure of quality, we're preparing students to lose to AI, to be incapable of intelligence augmentation. So the big story that I'm not hearing is the story about changing what humans should be learning, as opposed to the story about evil AI taking over, which is a risk, but only if we let it take over, or the story about having an assistant that's useful, but maybe that assistant just de-skills you because it takes over part of your job, but you're not prepared to do anything better. So I'll just say one more quick thing about bias. I've co-authored articles and chapters about at least 5 sources of bias that can occur in AI systems. You can have a biased data set, you can have a biased algorithm, you can have biased people interpreting the outcomes, and so on. And with work, one can eliminate or greatly reduce those 5 kinds of bias, and that's something really important to do. But at the end of the day, AI is like a parrot, but it's also like a mirror. It's a mirror that we hold up to the internet, and it reflects back what it sees about our society. And a biased society will always produce a biased image in the mirror. So we have to not only fix AI, we have to fix ourselves.
Wow. Okay, speechless about that last phrase. Thank you, Dr. Dide. I'm thinking about the classroom. You know, I've seen Facebook posts from my friends who are professors, and they talk about, you know, students turn in a paper and it's been written by the chat, right? What do you do? What does a teacher, a professor do? How can you scale up and challenge your students? Because they're going to go to the chat, and many of them are just going to turn over what the chat says. How do you do that? What's the proposal?
So at the start of the spring semester in my online course at Harvard, I spent 5 minutes talking to students about generative AI. And I'll tell you what I said. What I said is this. I said, you can use generative AI, and if you're smart about it, we're not going to be able to tell. But eventually, you're going to go out for a job interview. And in a job interviews today, you're often asked to do a task. So my younger daughter graduated in mechanical engineering. She was given different kinds of machines that she had to fix. If you're going for a marketing position, maybe you're asked in half an hour to produce a marketing plan. Now, what's going to happen after you produce your marketing plan is that the boss that's doing the hiring, she's going to type the same thing into ChatGPT. And if your marketing plan isn't a lot better than what comes out of the AI, you're not going to get hired because the AI is free and you're not. So if you use AI to do your work for you, you will lose to AI when you try to get a job. And the way to think about AI is as a partner, not as a substitute. So I read that people are using AI to write letters of recommendation, for example. I think that's horrible. I think that's malpractice. AI has no clue about the person you're writing the letter about. However, if I think of AI as a partner and I'm writing a letter of recommendation for somebody for a particular kind of job, at the end, I might ask a generative AI, is there a dimension that I've missed here that I should be talking about in the letter for this kind of job? And I could take what I get back and see if I've missed something. And then I could write the letter to include that kind of thing. That's the productive relationship with AI. And students, you know, just need to understand that it's only themselves that they're cheating if they rely on AI and then they expect to go out into a workplace.
You said the real question is what humans should be learning. What is an example of what humans should be learning?
Well, take me and all these AI-based assistants that the institute I'm involved with is building. What should I upskill to do? Well, one of the things I could upskill to do is to understand all the different cultures that my students bring in. My rough index for diversity in my classes is at the start of the semester, how many students' first names do I know how to pronounce? It's now down to about 30%. And I'm very proud of that. I think it's wonderful that I have such a diverse group of students from all across the world. and that I'm learning something about their cultures, but I could learn a lot more if I'm really going to understand how to interpret their goals, how to interpret what they say in class, how to interpret their work. AI cannot do that. You can feed in material on culture into an AI until the cows come home, but it doesn't understand culture because it doesn't have a culture. You can't understand a family if you don't have a family. You can't understand things about bodies like pain and death if you don't have a body. You can't understand spiritual concepts and ethical concepts if you don't have a moral system. And AI cannot get past that. It's surrounded by glass ceilings of different kinds.
Hector, you wanted to make a comment?
Yes, I wanted to thank you, Chris. It was very inspiring. About the education, I'm a bit concerned about breaking the social contract of when we read text, right? So we are trained to read signs in the metro or in the public transportation, and also read a contract more carefully to see what it's saying. But with text got longer, we tend to think that this is probably okay, and we need to read to look for errors or for inconsistency in a certain way. But that skill seems to be different now. So the critical reading is going to be different. It's not that you see a misspelling error, you disregard the text. It can be perfectly spelled and be wrong. So I wonder about your position on the actual skills that people need to have in this new world where text can look okay, but it's actually wrong.
Well, I agree with you. I think that it's important for people to understand reckoning, even if they're not going to be doing reckoning. If you've ever been in a fast food restaurant when the power goes out and people can't make change, the people behind the counter can't make change because they don't understand whether they should give back 50 cents or $50 because they don't know arithmetic. Now, should they be fluent in arithmetic? No, because we have machines to do that. But should they understand arithmetic? Absolutely. And I think that's the point that you're making.
Okay, thank you very much. Manny Otico has a question.
I have a question for Chris Dede. Do you see? I played around with AI and I see, and my concern is that it right now it's limited what it can do, but I see it having the possibility to get more intelligent, and that's where it can be a threat. For example, there was I think that there was an experiment I read about where somebody asked an AI, design a plan to take over the nuclear system. So the AI reached out to places to do that, but they just didn't have the capability to do it. But the point is that this is now, when technology moves forward very quickly, maybe 10 years time, they might be able to do that.
Well, let me say two things, and it's impossible to explain these, quickly. One of them is that these large language models were, as Hector described them, they don't actually understand any word that they give back to you. Not a thing. They're symbol manipulation systems, and they have no understanding of what the symbols mean. And to that extent, they're limited by what data they have. They're limited by what data is put in. And if intelligence involves creating something that goes beyond what you're just given, that when we say somebody does something intelligent, it's like stepping outside of just what you're given and adding something. Right now, AI cannot do that. It can do pretty impressive things because it can take in the whole internet rather than just, for example, what I happen to know. But it's still fundamentally limited by that. So is it going to somehow become knowledgeable and have a consciousness and turn into Skynet and decide to get rid of human beings? Another great science fiction set of movies about AI, right? The Terminator movies. No, not this kind of AI. But are people going to benefit If they turn everything over to a symbol manipulation system, absolutely not. The symbol manipulation system, as Hector is saying, can lie. It can do all sorts of bias things. It can be stupid enough to take a question like, how would you disable nuclear safeguards, and actually go look for an answer instead of saying, my God, why would you want to do that? Which is what, a rational, intelligent being would say. So we just have to understand that this is a kind of alien intelligence that lacks some things that we regard as fundamentally human, like having some degree of ethical system and some understanding of actions and consequences, and put guards around it in order to keep it from getting into the kind of trouble that science fiction writers convincingly portray when you just turn stuff over to an AI.
Thank you. Yeah, so people are asking questions in the chat, and they are, Hector and Shan have been answering. So take a look at the chat if you need. And quickly, before we go to the third speaker, Professor Dede, there were a couple of questions about, what should we be telling our kids to study? What are the, what do they need to study? What are the things they need to learn? What are the good careers in this context?
So I'll take my younger daughter as an example. She just graduated in mechanical engineering, but her passion is to make things better for marginalized people across the world, doing the kinds of infrastructure development that mechanical engineering can help with. That's her passion. Now, you can educate an AI to do narrow mechanical engineering kinds of things. But to do her passion, she has to understand human beings and cultures and languages and people's aspirations and visions for a better life across the world, because she can't just come in and say, I'm a mechanical engineer and I'm here to help you, right? I mean, she's there to empower people, not to tell people what to do. So her education could have been better if she'd been able to declare a passion and be prepared for the passion with all that human and cultural dimensions associated with making changes, than just to be prepared in mechanical engineering. And it's that side of it that we need to really be thinking about where our education needs to be better. We're spending years teaching people how to factor in mathematics. There is no workplace anywhere in the world, even in the most primitive possible country that doesn't have regular electricity even, where people earn a living by factoring. That's an app on a feature phone. So why are we doing that? That's crazy. We need to just spend one day on factoring so it's not magic, and then spend all the rest of that time teaching something that's on the human side of the equation. But what's on the high stakes tests? Factoring. We're the ones that are messing up our education. It isn't AI that's messing up our education. We're the ones that are messing up our education.
Yeah, good point. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that presentation and answering the questions. I'm going to go forward to the third speaker, Sean McGregor. I was going to play a video here, but Jessica, please hold on that. Let's go right into the speaker. Sean, please go ahead.
All right, I will take from there. Thank you very much for the first two speakers leading in here and the great discussion there. Let me quickly pull up some slides, and I'll run through these fairly quickly, but I'll note that I'm going to be making it a little bit challenging for the simultaneous translators here, so my apologies for that. And that'll be evident from the first slide here, talking about Microsoft deleting a, quote, teen girl AI after it became a Hitler-loving sex robot within 24 hours. This is March of 2016, very well-known article in the kind of AI ethics, safety, impacts space. One would hope it wouldn't happen again, but you go forward to January 2021, this time in Korea, where a chatbot was pulled that had many of the same factors involved in it. So we clearly didn't learn from that past incident. Why did this happen, though? We can go to the Santana aphorism of those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. This is lived time and again in human history. And we should ask then, how do we remember the past in AI? How do we make it so that we can make it safer, better, less biased? I'd like to appeal to the history of aviation, where aviation is much safer today than it ever has been on a fatalities per trillion revenue passenger kilometer basis. And a big part of that was learning from the past, recording accidents and incidents into databases so that we built that collective sense of history. That's where the project that I'm representing today via the Responsible AI Collaborative comes in. The AI Incident Database is a collection of harms produced in the real world by AI systems. It's inspired by similar systems in computer security, transportation, consumer product safety. Basically, a thing happens in the world that produces a harm. We record it, we make it discoverable. And very often we are recording it on the basis of reporting. The people out there doing the hard work, like a lot of them on this call today. What is our experience in indexing AI incidents through time? Well, if we were a startup, we would be raising millions of dollars because we have a hockey stick chart showing that it's basically going vertical. And this is a problem. We're seeing a lot more incidents in the world. And the reason for that could be established by looking back at that photo I introduced at the top. I real quickly went in and applied a computer vision model to or generative model to this image, and I inserted some of the physical artifacts of AI that are currently in the world. I'm not going to count all of them, but just say the result of more AI with the same safety culture surrounding AI and technology is why we are getting this takeoff of AI incidents and concern and attention for it. What the AI incident does is it collects each of these incidents that happen in the world and puts a number to them that we can actually create that community around those particular impacts and make it so that we can move to make the whole AI industry safer. The whole technical soup of safety is a complicated one that we need to build these information systems to understand them. And so each of the things you're seeing in this image are inspired actually by an incident in the database. To give you a few more, a little bit more fanciful incidents, this is an incident that happened in China where a woman was shamed for jaywalking by a computer vision system that decided that this image of a woman on the side of the bus was a woman that was jaywalking. So she was shamed. This is a case of a bus being mistaken for a woman. Another incident in the incident database is a case where a vehicle was cited as a result of this image being taken of a woman's shirt. It says knitter. It looks enough like the license plate that is KNI9TER. And this is an instance of a woman being mistaken for a car. It's a weird and big universe out there, and we're making these systems that are very brittle. They're more brittle than humans, and humans themselves are very brittle. And this is where we really desperately need to, in order to avoid harms produced by AI systems, really look across languages, cultures, and geographies to collaborate and ensure that AI benefits all. We're all out there experiencing the effects of AI systems, and without bringing that experience back into one place, we're in trouble. Who are we organizationally that are working on this problem? Beyond a growing list of volunteers, we also have incorporated an independent US nonprofit in 2020 called the Responsible AI Collaborative that is organizing incidentdatabase.ai, the AI incident database. And it's built to support and integrate the efforts of many different people and organizations. And in fact, reporters as well. We're predominantly engineers working to build that knowledge base or build the community architecture of AI safety. Among, there's a bunch of features I'm not going to go into. One I want to concentrate on here today, though, is translation. We're accepting reports of AI incidents in 132 different languages. That is using AI machine translation. It is not a perfect technology. Incident 72 in the incident database, wherein a Palestinian man was arrested because there was a machine translation of good morning that turned into attack them. It's a very powerful and brittle technology, something that's very useful, something we can use in society, but here we are. So what's next? I will highlight that the places most likely for AI to produce harms are those that are farthest from where the AI system is developed. A lot of AI right now is being developed in the United States, China, and Europe, and that is by no means the entirety of the world. So we desperately need all the people and languages, all the places that have AI incidents, which is everywhere, to collect those stories, submit them as incident reports, and be part of making AI good. I'm going to say there's a lot of people to credit, a lot of organizations to credit here. I'm not going to mention all of them, but say it is a truly community effort. And with that, I will end the presentation.
Thank you, Sean. Before we go to final questions, I wanted to play for you a video that will offer an insight on this issue of racial bias. We invited MIT researcher and computer scientist Joy Bolanwini to the panel, but she couldn't make it. I still wanted to show you some of her stuff.
My heart smiles as I bask in their legacies, knowing their lives have altered many destinies. In her eyes, I see my mother's poise. In her face, I glimpse my auntie's grace. In this case of deja vu, a 19th century question comes into view. In a time when Sojourner Truth asks, "Ain't I a woman?" Today, we pose this question to new powers, making bets on artificial intelligence, hope towers. The Amazonians peek through windows blocking deep blues as faces increment scars. Old burns, new urns, collecting data chronicling our past, often forgetting to deal with gender, race, and class. Again, I ask, ain't I a woman? Face by face, the answers seem uncertain. Young and old, proud icons are dismissed. Can machines ever see my queens as I view them? Can machines ever see our grandmothers as we knew them? Ida B. Wells, data science pioneer, hanging facts, stacking stats on the lynching of humanity, teaching truths hidden in data, each entry and omission, a person worthy of respect. Shirley Chisholm, unbought and unbossed, the first Black Congresswoman, but not the first to be misunderstood by machines well-versed in data-driven mistakes. Michelle Obama, unabashed and unafraid to wear her crown of history, yet her crown seems a mystery to systems unsure of her hair. A wig, a bouffant, a toupee, maybe not. Are there no words for our braids and our locks? Does relaxed hair and sunny skin make Oprah the first lady? Even for her face, well known, some algorithms fault her, echoing sentiments that strong women are men. We laugh, celebrating the successes of our sisters with serena smiles. No label is worthy of our beauty.
Okay, Jessica, can you stop the video? We got the point.
So could I make a comment on what
Absolutely.
Sean said about language, because I think it's really important. I'm hearing people say now, I don't need to learn any other languages than my primary language because we've got, machine translation. If I want something written in another language, I just tell a generative AI to do that. Nothing could be further from the truth. A language is not just a different set of sounds and symbols for expressing the same thing. Languages are ways of thinking. And if you know two languages, you have two ways of thinking, two different perspectives that are shaped by the context and the culture that created the language. And if you're translingual and you're analyzing something and using both languages in the process, you have a very valuable additional perspective. So we risk throwing away one of the most powerful things about being human, the diversity of language across contexts and cultures, when we say, oh, we can homogenize this using AI. And that's an example of the kind of thing that I'm trying to say about intelligence augmentation, that we use AI to empower the parts of us that are human, not to average across the parts of us that are human.
Thank you, Dr. Didi. Does anyone have a comment about the video? Any of you? I know that she was the person that was doing research on face recognition, and the machine couldn't recognize her face, and she put a white mask, and the machine recognized her. And she also calls herself the poet of code, which is why she was doing poetry. But there's been plenty of studies that shows racial and gender bias in the data that goes into AI, and therefore, AI has become biased. Any comments?
I guess if
Sean, go ahead.
if I could say something that, and I think that there certainly are important problems embedded within the data, but I think we also have to look at the complete system context and problem as well, where let's say the data itself is perfectly unbiased and can produce a well-performing system. There's still the question of, like, what do you set the camera on contrast wise? Like, is it going to be brighter or darker, which changes the performance of the system for people with different skin tone. And that's completely outside the scope of what the data is expressing. But there's an engineer that's making a decision. Do you set it so that darker skin tones show up better or lighter skin tones show up better? And to me, that means that even beyond like what is embedded in the data and what the AI subsystem is doing, it's about who has the power to make that decision of turning the knob towards performing better under one condition or another. And the problem that we often have is that there's someone sitting in the engineering seat that makes those decisions, and they very often look more of my skin tone than of someone with darker skin tone. And even with everyone being well-meaning, assuming that's the case, it ends up in a place where the person with power makes the decisions, and you end up with a biased result at the end of it.
Okay, there's still a lot of questions that we haven't been able to answer, but we don't have the time. We are 4 minutes away. And I just want to take one of the questions from Amar Gupta. He was asking about the do's and don'ts for our young generation Z readers. What are just maybe give me one do and one don't with AI, each of you, and anything else you want to comment, Hector?
Do everything you read or see, doubt that whether it is coming from a human or somebody's trying to get in your head. And don't Just don't, because something seems to be popular, just don't rely on that. I mean, learn to trust.
Thank you, Dr. Dede.
Don't think that an AI actually understands what it's telling you in the way that even the most ignorant human being would understand what they're telling you. Do understand when you enter the workplace that if you can't do things better than an AI can do them, you're not going to have a job.
Wow. Chan?
Do not rest at believing that it's magic and it just is this magical answer machine that is beyond reason or human comprehension for it. These are engineered systems produced by people. Peel back the mystery, play with the technology, understand its boundaries of performance, and don't fail to pay attention. The world is going to be changing very quickly, and everyone individually needs to work together on this one, because society has trouble with changes in the way it relates to each other information-wise from the time of the printing press and before. And so we need to all work together on this one.
That is so true. Thank you so much. Hector, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, so this is probably a message for this audience. And so the way we humans go through big crisis is we're overthinking it all the time, and then finally finding a solution together, right? So there are many open problems here. And I think the most important thing that we need to do is to keep elaborating on what we find problematic, what we find useful. I mean, if we want a programmer somewhere to change whatever they are doing for configuring the software, we need that to become a PR problem. So their bosses go over there and they say, yes, I read that, but I was busy last night at 3 a.m. and I just didn't check. So what we focus on is what's going to be problematic, and it's going to be change in the directions that we want. So this conversation is when this happened. And this is basically like a new reality. We have a new moon, and now we need to rethink all of this.
Orhan was commenting in the chat, we need more sessions on alien intelligence. I second that. That would be fun. Sandy, I don't know if you want to say some final words. We have 1 minute.
I am in an absolute kind of extreme moment of trying to process all of this, but it feels so great to have these experts spend time with us and help us feel we can understand this, we can get this. And I love this idea, this call to action to peel back the mystery, that it's not that we're incapable of deciphering what we have created, and we have created AI. So I feel very optimistic, whereas I went into this feeling like I'll never get it. So thank you to all our speakers for your confidence in us.
Thank you, everyone. Have a nice weekend. Thank you to the speakers and to the reporters.